Moving to Italy has long been a dream of many people, and rightly so, because it is such a beautiful country. But there are some things that I wish someone had told me nearly 7 years ago when I first stepped foot into Italy. 3 years ago, I recorded a video sharing what I wish I had known before moving to Italy. Fast forward to 2025, what has changed, and what do you need to know? Change is either going to be your best friend or your biggest enemy. But one thing is for sure, it's going to be a daily part of your life. And this is something that I don't know, I hadn't really expected. Now, don't get me wrong, I knew that by moving to Italy, I would change certain aspects of my character, certain aspects of my life, because of course, I'll be living in a different country, in a completely different culture. But what I think I didn't understand was how deep-rooted that change would be, and how it wouldn't just be the surface level changes where, you're changing your routine a little bit or you're buying different food, for example. It would also be really deep-rooted, and it would be like mental changes of your personality, things that you hadn't even considered, because there is nothing like moving to another country, particularly alone at the very beginning, to really get to know yourself on a much deeper level. And in that experience, you inevitably end up changing. And so I think, this is something that I wasn't prepared for, and I wish I had known about more at the beginning, because I think it would have almost given me a sense of reassurance to know that the process was normal, it was very natural, and as a result, I would become a better person on the back of it. And also, it would make me less scared of change, because let's be honest, change is one of those things that either excites people or paralyzes them. It has this kind of effect most of the time. And if I had known that change would be such a constant in my life, I think it would have made me feel braver at the beginning and a little bit more sure of myself, because it did take me a while to find myself here in Italy. I did go through a process of losing myself, and I think it was just because I didn't understand how necessary it would be to change and how natural that process would be as well. So I definitely think that to know that change is going to be like with you every step of the way for the whole time that you live in this country, because I really do believe that you will constantly be evolving yourself and growing. If you are living a fulfilled life here in Italy, then I think it would, in a way, have given me a greater sense of comfort. Everybody always believes this, that it's so cheap to live in Italy, but I realise that actually it is a bit of a myth, because there are so many factors that underpin this, that actually it's not a blanket answer for the entire country. It really depends on where in Italy you live. North Italy especially is actually considered to be one of the most expensive parts of Italy. If you live in a place that is very popular with tourists, naturally that drives the price up of everything from housing through to local services. And a really recent example of this is the city of Salerno. So, recently we were looking at houses in the province of Salerno, because we will be moving back there in a few weeks' time. And Salerno was the city that I lived in for 4 years, from 2018 to 2022. And during that time, it was always considered to be a more expensive part of South Italy, but nowhere near as expensive as it is today. Like literally, we could not move back to the centre of Salerno, even if we wanted to, because the price of property now is ridiculous. So many properties have been turned into holiday lets, into transitorial, which is short-term leases, that it's really outpricing local people who want to find somewhere to stay on a long-term basis. And so this is the downside of tourism sometimes in Italy, in the sense that because Salerno is now an up-and-coming area with an airport and, its proximity to Amalfi and to other parts of Italy, people are starting to realise this and are starting to benefit from this. And as a result, everything is going up in price. And so, that's an example of how really depending on where you live can also impact how expensive you find life there. But then you've also got to remember that beneath all of this, everything is relative here in Italy. What so many people forget is that, generally speaking, Italian people do not earn a good wage. They do not have a good salary. This is, of course, profession dependent and also location dependent, but especially here in the south of Italy. So naturally speaking, everything is going to be lower in price, although things are changing because of the cost of living crisis. But, generally speaking, everything is going to be lower in price because people do not have the money to pay for expensive products and services. So there is that to factor in, because I think when I moved here, I did buy into this whole, wow, it's so cheap to live in Italy. I'd come from London, where the price of anything in London is extortionate. But I would go into a supermarket here and I would be like blown away by the cost of a bottle of wine. In fact, I've still got a photograph that I took back in 2018 in the supermarket of all of the different bottles of wine, because I was so amazed at how cheap they were. But now, nearly 7 years later, I can say that I've got used to and accustomed to the prices now, and they no longer feel as cheap as perhaps they once did. And also, I realise that because I'm working here, when I balance the cost of things to what I actually earn, I realise just how relative it is. And so this is a bit of a myth, how cheap life is here. It really does depend on where you are, what you're doing, where you're coming from as well, what kind of comparison you're making to arrive at that conclusion. And also it depends on, if you arrive with a nest egg of money because you're retiring here, or if you arrive and you're dependent on work here, because trust me, your viewpoint will immediately change if you end up working in Italy and you see the cost of things compared to your salary. You will look at things from a different perspective. So this is a little bit of a myth, I have to say, and it's something that I wish I'd known before, because I think it would have given me a different perspective at the very beginning. I probably would have had that moment of excitement when I'm like, wow, everything is so cheap. But then I would have had that grounding moment where I would have been like, but hold on, this is because of X, Y, and Z. So I think this is always really good to know at the very beginning that things are not as cheap here as they may seem. And even now I can look at things and be like, well, that's pretty expensive for Italy, because I understand things so much more having spent so long living here. So yes, this is, in my opinion, definitely a bit of a myth. I think for me personally, I wish I had known that it would take time to form connections and to make friends here in Italy. I think I just had this romantic, naive notion when I first moved here in 2018 that it would be somewhat easy. I'd been lucky because I had already made connections with an Italian family through the language exchange that I had done a few months prior. But I really believed, because I had had such a positive experience with that kind of interaction, that I really believed that it would ripple out and I would meet many other people and build my friendship circle in that way. But boy, oh boy, it took ages. And it also took me a long time to find what I would call my tribe, the people that I could talk to about the things I'm interested in and they would get me, the people that, I could also communicate with in English, because for me that was important. As much as I know that I live in Italy and it's important to speak in Italian, I also don't want to lose that side of me where I can speak in my mother tongue here in Italy and express myself in that way too. And so it took me a long time. About a year and a half in Salerno before I connected with the expat community there and started to form some real friendships. And here in Palermo, it took me maybe about a year before I really started to make connections with people here as well. So in every place that you go to, it takes time. And I think I wish I'd known this at the beginning. Do you know why? Because it would have been a bit of a driving force for me. It would have made me more determined to push myself out of my comfort zone, to get out of the house, to make an effort in my local community, to really even begin to build those connections before I stepped foot on the plane. It would have completely changed the way that I handled that aspect of my life. And I wouldn't have waited until I arrived here before I started thinking about this. I would have put some thought into it before I even moved. And that's why I wish I'd known this before. Italian people are warm and friendly for the majority of times. This isn't the same for everybody, I have to be honest, but for the majority of times, this is how they can be. But it doesn't mean that you're going to become best buddies immediately. It takes time. What you have to remember is that a lot of friendships here have been built since childhood, and you will see Italian people grow up with a core set of friends that follow them pretty much for all of their life. And of course, there'll be new friends that are added into their circle, but it's different. You're not necessarily going to have the deep and meaningful friendship that you expect, because Italian people already have that from that core set of friends that have grown up with them all of their life. So you've got to get used to this, and you've got to be prepared for this, because it will change your experience if you can come here knowing this at the very beginning, because it will definitely make you more confident in pushing yourself out there and making an effort, joining local groups, seeking out expat communities, and really putting the work in, because it's the groundwork you need to put in to later build the connections that are going to really help you here in Italy. I have to be honest, I would read in expat communities before I moved here just how difficult the bureaucracy was. So I had some kind of an idea that there might be a problem. But I was quite optimistic at that time. And I was like, oh, it's okay. I come from London. I'm sure I can handle it. I've never been so stressed about one single aspect of life here than I have about bureaucracy. It is one area of life that has tested me the most, apart from the working culture here. And this is why I think so many people get it wrong. They think it's just a minor inconvenience, when actually it's something that has the power to radically stress you out at any given opportunity. There are a few things you've got to know about the bureaucracy here. It is extremely complicated. It's often really old-fashioned as well. And when I say old-fashioned, I mean a lot of bureaucracy is still done with paper documents. Even though we're in 2025 and the computer has been with us for years, a lot of government offices will have files of paper documents. It's just how it's done here. And also your experience with bureaucracy will vary from one city to one town to one region to one part of Italy to the next. There is not a uniform approach when it comes to bureaucracy in Italy. And this is really difficult, I think, to get used to. And, this is why I tell you from now, be prepared, embrace yourself, read all the things you can about Italian bureaucracy. Make sure that you are really educated on what it is you need to know and the kind of bureaucracy that you need to get sorted out depending on your individual situation. Watch this video up here, because I also share some additional tips that will help you with bureaucracy. But you've got to get ready for this. You've got to take it more seriously, okay? Because it's the one thing that can trip you up. And I'll give you an example. I've been living in Palermo now for 2.5 years. This was the first city that I moved to outside of Salerno. So it was a different experience for me in terms of bureaucracy. I got excited because they had online portals that didn't exist in Salerno back then, but those online portals didn't work. And I ended up waiting an exceptionally long time for my residency to be changed when it should have been a 40-day process. I would go months with unanswered emails. The offices were consistently understaffed. It was a huge problem, and this was the first hurdle that I've had to overcome when it comes to bureaucracy living in Italy. It's here in Palermo, and that's what you need to brace yourself for. You might get lucky and have a great experience like I did in Salerno. In fact, I'm relieved to go back and deal with the bureaucracy in that region. I sincerely hope it hasn't changed, but I can be sure it's not going to be like what I've had to deal with here in Palermo. So, small blessings, but yeah, you've got to brace yourself for this, because there will be online portals. I do believe that perhaps in the north of Italy, they work a lot better than they do here in the south, because here in the south, you will go through the portal and you will book an appointment for something, and it might be in the next 6 months or even in the next 12 months like we experienced. So it's something, but please don't underestimate this. Don't trivialize it. Bureaucracy is a real deal here. You must be prepared. You must educate yourself. And even if you think you speak good Italian, you absolutely must bring somebody with you to help you who speaks better Italian than you, even a native person, if you can, with translation at these government offices, because the use of English is next to non-existent. But not only that, sometimes they talk about things that you might not understand, or they talk really quickly, and it can just be a bit stressful. It's very reassuring to have somebody with you who can do the translation for you and to make sure that you fully understand your requirements. This is super, super important, particularly if you're dealing with visas or anything like this. So that would be something else that I would recommend that you consider. But yeah, get ready for this, because it is going to be a very challenging part of your life here. Oh, goodness me. Another thing I'm guilty of. Hello. I really believe this was true back in 2018. I mean, sometimes I wonder like what I was thinking when I decided to move to Italy. Like, what did I think it would be? Like, I'd just pick my life up from London and place it neatly here in Italy and everything be the same. Gosh, like you can tell I've grown so much in nearly 7 years because I don't even recognize the woman who came here back in 2018 sometimes. But essentially, you need to learn the language because English is not widely spoken here in Italy. Don't get it twisted. You might go to the tourist places and see lots of signs and menus in English, but it's just for the tourist places. When you go out to where the residents and local people live, you're going to find that not many people can communicate with you. And that's a problem when you're starting to live here and you need to get things done and you want to make connections. So it's really important that you try to improve your level of Italian and do as much as you can before you move here. I don't believe, and as I've said in many other videos, that you need to have a degree of fluency before you move here because language learning is a process. And for some people to arrive at the point where they feel like they are near fluent can take years. And I don't think you should hold off on your dream for all of that time. But I do think that you have to be realistic. You need to be able to communicate in everyday situations. You need to be able to go into a bar and ask for a coffee. You need to be able to go into the supermarket and ask for something if you need help. You need to be able to ideally go into government offices and be able to speak with people there. So this means that you are going to need to have at least an elementary level of Italian to begin with. And it's super important. So please don't underestimate this. Please don't naively believe, like I did, that, just a few words here and there is going to get you by. This isn't a holiday. This is your everyday life we're talking about here. And you will have to deal with many things that you don't have to deal with on holiday that require you to speak in Italian. So really take the time to study and make it a consistent habit once you start living here as well. You will pick things up for sure just by the sheer fact that you're living here, but don't let that mean that you neglect your own independent studies. This has to be an ever evolving, changing process. And I'm proof of that nearly 7 years in. I understand so much more now than I've ever understood in my life. I'm just working through the blocks that I have when it comes to speaking, but I know this is normal because even my English students go through this process. But yeah, you've just got to keep pushing yourself and you've got to be kind to yourself on the journey as well. You are not the same as everybody else. Some people pick up languages a lot quicker than others. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. We are wired differently. We have different attention spans, different levels of focus, different responsibilities and things that we're doing in our lives. We are not carbon copies of one another. So please remember that when you look at your own language learning journey, but essentially do the study and kind of learn as much Italian as you can before you move here. Oh gosh, this is a bit of a tired stereotype, I think, when it comes to Italy. I will say, when it comes to pasta, a lot of Italian people do eat pasta every day, but not every single Italian person. It's like somebody saying about British people, every British person eats fish and chips for dinner. Well, it's not true. So it's the same here in Italy. Pasta is an integral part of an Italian person's diet. Absolutely. You will find it as, the main dish in many restaurants, but it doesn't mean that it's something that people eat every single day. From personal experience, I do. I tend to eat pasta every day at lunch and I love it. But it's not the same for everyone. So this is a stereotype. It's not true. I do believe you can have a varied diet here because Italian people will also eat meat and fish and rice and vegetables. There are lots of different dishes that are prepared here in Italy. It's not just two dishes alone. And even pasta, well, there are so many different pasta variations and recipes that you can't really get bored of that staple item. So, get ready for this because some people will eat pasta every day, but not everyone. And don't let that deter you from thinking that your diet is going to be limited here because it isn't. And then when it comes to pizza, no, I don't know any Italian person who eats pizza every day at all. Myself included, I don't eat pizza every day, maybe once a week or twice a month at best, but certainly not every single day. Like, as I said before, Italian people have a varied diet. They don't just stick to two different food groups and types. And also I would say as well, rather controversially maybe, I don't think pizza tastes the same in all the different parts of Italy. I'm biased because I spent 4 years living in the Campania area, which of course houses the city of Naples, where pizza originated from. The pizza there is exceptional. Another amazing reason why I'm so happy we're going back, because since we moved to Palermo, I only recently found a pizzeria that does something very similar to the pizza I was used to in Naples. It's not the same, but it's very similar. Other than that, I had some terrible experiences here, really and truly, like not the pizza that I had been used to eating for 4 years. So I think one thing you will come to learn about Italy, and I digress a little bit with this, but it's important for you to know, where a food type originates from is usually where it tastes its absolute best. A classic example of this, apart from pizza, is arancina or arancino, depending on what part of Sicily you're from. If you were to eat this classic rice ball anywhere else in Italy, I promise you it does not taste the same. There used to be a Sicilian kind of food place that opened up in Salerno, and they started selling arancina, and it wasn't the same at all. And when I came back here to Palermo, that's when I felt like I tasted real arancina again. So you've got to get used to this, like always try the food that is typical to a particular city, town or region, because it's going to taste its absolute best there. But that's a bit of a digression, but it's an important thing for you to know. But essentially, this is such a tired stereotype. The Italian cuisine is so much more than just pasta and pizza. And I think the longer you live here, the more you will really realize that for yourself as well. Networking and connections. It's going to change your life here in Italy, because one thing I didn't realize until I started living here is that it's not about what you know, but it's about who you know that is going to get you places here in Italy. Connections are so valued. Word of mouth recommendations are so valued that if you don't know anyone and you are a complete outsider, you often have to go above and beyond to prove yourself. And I'll give you a really, really recent example, because we went back to the Salerno province recently because we have been house hunting, as we're going to be moving back to that area in a matter of weeks. And we're moving to a particular part of Salerno where we don't actually know anyone. And so it was the first time that we were looking for a home completely cold, pretty much how you might look for a home if you decide to move to Italy. Because really, up until now, I've always known somebody who has known someone. And so it's always been a fairly smooth process in terms of finding somewhere to live. But this time it really wasn't. It felt like I had to sell my soul to persuade the landlord that we were really good people. And I didn't really like how that whole process made me feel. And I realized that, damn, if we had known somebody who knew this landlord, it would have been enough. Like, we wouldn't have had to sell our soul, because it would have been implied that because we knew this person, that we were good people. Like, literally, that is how connection works here in Italy. I cannot stress it enough how important it is, and how it can be so hard to adjust to life here if you don't have connections in place, which is why it's something you really need to start working on really as soon as possible. In my opinion, it's never too early. Of course, your initial kind of connections are probably going to be formed online, unless you're able to come and spend a significant amount of time here in Italy. But at some point, you need to transition those connections into in-presence ones. But really and truly, it will make a world of difference to your experience, because I hate to say it, but it is true. Sometimes if you don't come from Italy, people do take advantage of you. Maybe they'll charge you a higher price, or they'll treat you in a different way. This is not to say it's the same for everyone or for everywhere. However, I have seen this happen, that, people will know that you're not from the local area and they'll charge you something different. So you have to be careful. And this is why it helps to have connections, because they will always tell you where is the best place to go and get something at the best price. And so connections are so invaluable. Like, I really, really stress how important it is for you to make those connections. And, for me, it took me a while to adjust to life here, purely because I hadn't yet built enough of those connections. I didn't spend enough time early on focusing on this particular aspect, and I wish I had. So make sure that you do learn from me and start to form those connections, because it's really, really going to make a huge difference to your overall experience here. This is difficult to adjust to, actually, because It really depends on your culture and the country that you're coming from. Now, I come from London, and certainly I was quite reserved in London. I've never been somebody to be really flamboyant and, really open in that way. Like when you get to know me, yeah, you see my true character, my personality. You can have a laugh with me. You understand I'm quite a bubbly person. But to a complete stranger, I'm very cold and aloof. And it's just because this is me. Like, I'm very real as well, because I think, I meet you for the first time. I've got to get to know you. You're not immediately my best buddy because I've just said hello to you. I have to get to know you. And then when I know you, you will know me, and all will be wonderful. But, I'm just very real. I'm not fake. I'm not one of those people that can plaster on a smile and a dance and be like, hi, and, be so superficial in that sense. I like to get to know people on a much deeper level. And when I get to know people, I feel like I make connections that last a very long time, and it's worth it for me. But you see, here in Italy, it's different. Here in South Italy especially, people are very open and they're very warm and they're very kind of outspoken as well at times. And it can be very comforting on the one hand, particularly if you move here alone, you immediately feel this sense of community and it's really wonderful. However, it also can feel very kind of intrusive at other times. Like I've been in the supermarket before and the cashier will start asking me questions about my life. Oh, do you have a boyfriend here? Where do you work? What do you do? And I'm standing there going, what the hell? I don't even know your name. But you see, for an Italian person, that's normal for them because they're naturally curious. And that's what you've got to get used to. And that can be hard to adjust to, particularly if you're a shy person, if you're a bit of an introvert. You've got to get used to being a bit more open living here because people want to get to know you. And in a way, it's nice because they're curious and, you get to know a bit about them sometimes as well if you manage to have a bit of a conversation with them. But yeah, it can be a part of life that's hard to adjust to. But you've got to understand that this is how things are done here in Italy. And also the communication isn't just verbal, but it's very associated to movement as well. Like, lots of hand gestures and body movements that sometimes I don't know how to interpret them. Like I will be like, are they having a fully blown argument or are they best friends? Like it's still difficult, even nearly 7 years down the line, to understand this. So there can be many different ways that people communicate here. I want to say as well, again, perhaps a little bit controversially, that I don't think every Italian person is as nice as they seem. This is something that I've learned the longer I've lived here, because when I first moved here, I was blown away by how kind and friendly and nice everybody seemed on the surface. I was like, I've never lived in a nicer country. Like I come from London where people ignore you if they don't know you and sometimes don't even apologise if they bump into you. Trust me, that's a bit of a myth. We do say sorry a lot in the UK, but not everybody will apologise if they step on your toe, for example. Anyway, I digress. But I came here being like, wow, I can't believe it. Everybody's so nice. And then the longer I spent here, the more I got to see beneath the smiles. And I realized that not every smile is genuine. Some people plaster the smile on, but it's completely fake. And you get to realize that the longer you spend here. So it's interesting. The communication styles, the way people behave here is fascinating. I think it's something that I will continuously learn from the longer I spend here. But it's definitely something that you need to understand more of and get ready for before you move here. Ooh, work. I've done a lot of videos about the working culture here because apart from language and bureaucracy, it has been something that has tested me a lot. Most notably because it is so different what I've been used to my entire life back in the UK. It's really difficult to adjust to the working culture here. There are so many things you've got to get used to. You've got to get used to a difference in pay, difference in working conditions, difference in contracts, difference in mindset and approach to work as well. Absolutely. It can be really difficult, but you see how you can help yourself is that you educate yourself on what the working culture is like here. I didn't do any of that. I just stepped into my first job blissfully unaware of how different it would be to the UK. Unless you are remote working and you're lucky enough to be able to work remotely from another country or for a multinational company, work here can be tough, it can be very low paid, and it's very difficult to make progression in your career here. And so for this reason, I would say you've got to think carefully if this is one of your motivations for moving to Italy, because unless you are planning to move here and progress in a particular sector, like the medical field, for example, I'm not really sure this is the best place for you to really create a thriving career here unless you choose to do something independently on your own. So that's definitely something that was very, very hard to adjust to because I'm so precise and I'm so used to getting things done on time. And I've been, at points in my past waiting and wondering when I'm going to get paid because I didn't used to get paid on the same date every month. I mean, it blows my mind, really and truly. So do your research about the working culture here because it's not all it's cracked up to be all the time. Learning Italian would have made my transition easier. Absolutely. It would have eradicated those kind of feelings of uncomfortableness and loneliness that I went through the first year and a half or so of moving to Italy. I would have felt more confident. I don't think I would have lost myself in the same way. It would have been an entirely different experience. I may have made more friends than I did at the beginning and better connections with people. So definitely take the time to learn the language because it will radically improve your experience. Building connections early on would have changed things for me as well because I think knowing people makes a huge difference to your time here, and building in-presence connections as much as possible. It's very lovely to have expat communities online, particularly ones that are supportive. There aren't that many of them, but stay tuned, there might be another one coming soon. Spoiler alert. But essentially, it's not easy to necessarily transition those connections into real life unless they live in the area where you're living. That said, though, there is a need for online expat communities because sometimes you cannot find other expats where you live, and so you need to have a point of support, absolutely. But you also want to have in-presence connections because it is those that are going to be able to help you on a day-to-day basis if you have a problem, if you have a question, or you just want to meet with someone and have a coffee and a chat. So really try to nurture your connections early on. I think that can help to make your transition smoother, and it would have helped to make my transition smoother as well. Understanding bureaucracy more. I wish I had done more homework to understand just how complicated this process is, because I think I would have come here and been a lot stronger and tougher, and I would have been ready for what was to come. I think coming here as I did, just knowing the bare basics, I mean, it helped because when I moved here, I moved when the UK was still part of Europe. So really there was minimal paperwork that I had to do back then. But still, even to just be a bit more educated about the process, I think would have changed the game for me. So make sure that you read up on everything that you can to do with bureaucracy and really understand what you have to do, because it will make your transition so much easier. What a beautiful question. No, I don't. I think there are some things that I regret, like not paying enough attention to learning the language and not really understanding what my life could be like here. But in a way, I've learned so much from not knowing that at the beginning, that I've grown and developed so much as a person as a result. So I wouldn't say it's regret, but it's something that I think could have improved my experience. Absolutely. And I think this is the thing that you have to remember. When you move to another country, there are so many parts of your life that you're going to uproot and change that it can come as a shock to the system. And this is completely normal. This is why everybody talks about the culture shocks here in Italy. But it's something that is going to change you for the better. But you need to be educated. You need to understand what you're letting yourself in for. And so if you want to dive a bit deeper into life here in Italy and really get taken behind the scenes and have like live chats with me and ask me questions about your move, why not consider joining the Aperitivo Lounge? For €9.99 a month, you will get access to me once a month in a live Q&A hangout where I will answer your questions and talk about a specific topic every month. You will also get a monthly bonus video where I really take you into my life. So at the moment, I'm filming a week in my life here in Italy, which will be my February behind the scenes. And I also post exclusive posts and polls to help you not only to understand what you want me to create. So maybe I can create a video that you desperately need to watch. Or, I share with you some of my experiences here, because I think if you can learn from me and my experiences here in South Italy, it can help you to improve your life and the life that you're going to lead here. So I hope this video has given you an insight into some of the things I wish I had known before moving to Italy. Other than that, though, I'm happy with the progress that I've made. And I think, I'm continuing to grow and evolve and take you on this journey with me, which I think is the most special thing of all. I'll see you in the next video.